Welcome back to the part 3 of this CRUD application. And the last time we have seen on how to insert the data, we have seen on how to fetch them, and today's video I'm going to show you how now to update the data from our database, and we'll be able to catch the new information. Update is one of the time consuming operation, but it's worth it, so that's why I'm asking you to bear with me, and you are going to see on how to perform this. So as we are having this edit button, we are going to go back in our codes and we're going to perform other things in here. And remember last time when we were getting the data from the server, we didn't initialize anything to these buttons, and this is the time we are going to use the button values for our interest. So I'm going to set in another, I'm going to give it another attribute, and I'm going to call this as value, and inside here I'm going to do like this one, and inside I'm going to put item.id, and these buttons will be containing also the value of the ID of the specific item that they will present. All right, and not only that, but also we are going to add some other specific classes so that whenever we click on these buttons, they will be called by the classes. And this is what I mean. I'm going to give this as an edit employee. I'm going to give it another class called edit employee, and I'm going to give this as delete employee, like this one. And we're going to use these classes for our interest. So hang in there. So I'm going to go down here. After now we are outside of this function, and I'm going to perform other things. I'm going to add a quick listener to these buttons. Whenever we click to one of these buttons, for example, let me say I click on the button for edit, it will give me the exact value of the ID that it will contain. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add a quick event. I'm going to say document, and I'm going to listen for the quick event, and I'm going to pass in the specific class. For example, this is for edit employee. And what happens after we click this, I'm going to go ahead and initialize another variable, and I'm going to call this as emp id, and I'm going to say this dot var. And this is now how we extract the ID from the button. And to be sure that we're getting the ID, I'm going to use the console.log, and I'm going to pass in the emp ID like this one. So let's go back to our app, and then we have to refresh and test if we are getting that. And you can see that it's breaking, so we're going to see where there is a problem. And I'm going to go back on here. So let me refresh, and this is where we're having a problem. I forgot the comma here, and I hope that will resolve the issue. Let me refresh. Tada, and then you are getting this. So I'm going to go here and try to click on edit. You can see that I'm getting the ID as 1, 2, and so on and so forth. And for now, we are now assured that we are getting the respective IDs for each row here. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to remove this console.log because we're using it for testing purposes only. And after that, we are going also, as we're inserting data by using the model, we are going to go and use this exact model for now the update. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make a copy of all of this model real quick, copy, and I'm going to paste it here, but I'm going to add some I'm going to add some guidance here as edit model, and paste it here, and I can say okay, and edit model like this one. This is how I'm going to call it, and I'm going to change some of the value. For example, I'm going to call this as edit employee, and where there is add, I'm going to give it edit. I will leave this as they are because they are the exact values that will be presented in there. But in here, I'm going to call this as edit. All right, I'm going to call this as edit, like this one. Okay, and here where there is called, it is called add employee, I'm going to call this as update employee. Okay, after we are done with that, I'm going to add, and I'm going to also edit here, and I'm going to make this error list as from the edit, so as to never cause the ambiguity between these error lists, because we have this error list and there is also the another error list to another model. And the other thing that we need to do here, I'm going to pass in some IDs so as to be able to set the value. So I'm going to say ID equal to, and I'm going to give it some of the naming convention as edit names, and I'm going to copy these several times, and then we are going to rename according to our need, and where there is another input for email, for phone, and also the input for the load. And I'm going to say edit lore, edit phone real quick, and edit email. All right, I hope now this is good and you are good to go. But wait a moment, before we do anything, I'm going to add another input that will act as our ID holder. I'm going to call this, I'm going to give it an ID, and we have an ID as employee ID, like this one. All right, so after we are done with this, we are going to make sure that whenever we click on this edit button, whenever we set this, we are going also to show the model, and I'm going to call the model like this one. I'm going to say, okay, edit, I'm going to pass it as an ID, edit employee dot model, and I'm going to pass in show. So let's go back and give it a refresh and test it out. Okay, you can see that it was able to show us all these kind of stuffs. So far so good. And as we are getting this model, I'm going to also make sure that whenever I click on edit, I'm going to send the request to the server to request for the appropriate data for this ID. So how are you going to do that? So let's go back to the code and see what we are going to do on here. And as we were extracting this ID, we can use the opportunity as we are having the ID in this block, and I'm going to make an AJAX request to the server. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to call in some AJAX, and the method here, it will be the get method, as we will be getting the data from the server, and we don't need to send any of this because we're getting back the data. So I'm going to remove this because we don't need it. We need only the type and the URL, and the URL that we're going to fetch data from is the URL that we are going to pass in to our loops, and you will link that path to the method into the controller, and then to get the data back to us. Enough of talking. I'm going to call this as edit employee, and I'm going to pass in some ID, and where I'm going to pass ID, I'm going to add this ID, and I'm going to say I'm going to concatenate with emp ID, like this one. And after we are done with that, we are going to this web.php file, and this is where we are going to make a request. And as I'm having other sort of get, I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to copy this and then paste it here, and I'm going to change some of the things here. I code this as edit employee, and we also passed the data. Also, I'm going to do like this one and pass in some ID, and after we're done passing some ID, I'm going to specify the method that will help us, and I'm going to call this as edit. And after we do that, we are now ready to go into the employee controller, and then we are going to implement this method. Okay, so let's go to the employee controller, and in here down, I'm going to add the edit method that will help us to fetch the data for the value that we need to display into our model. So I'm going to say public function, and I'm going to call this as edit, and to really take the ID as the parameter. And in here, I'm going to first of all fetch the employee, and I'm going to call the employee model, of course, And after doing this, I'm going to find the employee with the exact ID from the parameter. And we are going to say if we are getting the employee, and I'm going to say, okay, if you are getting the employee, there is something that we are going to implement, and we also need to implement any other case whenever we don't get any employee. And whenever we get the employee here, I'm going to reuse some of the code that we used earlier so that I can make them, I can use them to my interest. I'm going to copy these and back into our method. If we get the employee, we can go ahead and we can set the status to 200, and then I can say employee, and I can use the variable for the employee in here. All right, we are done right here, and I'm going to go to the else block also and implement the what is going to be displayed whenever we don't get the employee or the ID is not valid. And in that case, it's going to return the 404, and I'm going to say that employee not found. All right, so after we handle all of that, we are now ready to test and see if this is going to work. I'm going to go back here and give it a refresh and try to I'm going to open this developer console, and I'm going to try to click on edit. You can see that it was able to bring this, but we didn't console that after the response. And I'm going to go back here in the index, and after we are done here, I'm going to console.log the response, and we do that for the purpose of taking a look, and you see that we are getting the response before we do anything else. And I'm going to go back and click edit. You can see that I was able to get now the employee with this kind of information, and when I go to another one, you can see that I'm getting the exact information as expected. All right, this is good. And after we're done with this, what are we going to do with our data? Of course, we're going to set this data into our model. And the way we are going to do that, we are going to first check the response that we are getting. And I'm going to pass the if, and inside the if condition, I'm going to check for the response and status. If now the status go to 200, we are now assured that the response is now in positive way, or we were able to get the response as succeed. And what you're going to do is now to initialize all the fields, and you're going to pass in the appropriate data. So the way we're going to do that, I'm going to say, for example, there is a field that is called edit name, and I'm going to pass in some value, and the value that I'm going to pass in is the value from the response dot employee and dot names, and I'm going to repeat these several times so as to be able to satisfy all our fields. And here I'm going to pass in some of the email, phone, lore, and also the employee ID. You remember the field that we used to set so as to react as a verification after we are done with this. So I'm going to put in like email and phone and the row and the ID. All right, after we are done with this, we can go ahead and also handle the error. For example, if we get the 404, you can do it in the else statement. You can handle it yourself. So I'm going to go back and refresh and test if this is working. Whenever I click on edit, you can see that it was able to pull all this information, but there is a problem on here. But you can see all other things are working, and the ID is setting itself on here. Cool. So we're going to see where there is a problem. Maybe it is edit name. I'm going to go back and check what I did put there. It is edit names. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this to edit names. I hope this will work. All right. So whenever we refresh and go here, consider it was able to pour this information as expected. And after we are done with that, we are going to go back to also implement this button on the edit button. What will happen whenever we click on edit, where we will be capturing all the changes that we have done in this form, and then we will update the data related to this ID. Cool. So let's go ahead and implement that too. And for that case, I'm going to also add another quick event, or the quick event listener, and I'm going to handle this like this one. And I'm going to say, okay, document, and the event that I'm going to listen to is the quick event, of course. And where to the update employee, remember the name that we called our button, and it will have this, and I'm going to prevent the default to restrict our form from submitting to self. And after we are done with this, we are going to first of all get the ID, and the way we're going to get this one, I'm going to call this as emp id2, and it will be equal to the value that is on where there is an employee ID, like this one. After we are done with this, I'm going to go ahead and make an array of data that will be submitted to the server. But as I'm having this here, I'm going to use this to my interest, and I'm going to copy this. But pay attention, whenever you copy paste the values from somewhere, you need to pay attention and see that you edited all the required fields. So as I'm having the edit as the common keyword, I'm going to say edit underscore this, and I'm going to be passing also this ID like this one. Oh, oops, here it's supposed to be inside like this one. Okay, so we are not going to use the classes, so I'm going to remove this, and we'll be reminded with this. So after getting the employee ID and all the required data, we are now ready to make another AJAX request. But before we do the AJAX request, we remember that we have to pass in this header. So I'm going to copy this as we're going to send the data to the server. It may bring some shenanigans that where you are going to satisfy this in the first place. So I'm going to go back and try to make another AJAX request, and I'm going to do like this one. And the method that we're going to use as we're going to update, you're going to use the put method, and on the URL, I'm going to say update employee, and I'm going to concatenate with the emp id2, and the data, of course, the data that we're going to pass in here are the data that we initialized back here. And after this, I'm going to say that the data type will be JSON, of course, JSON. And to make sure that we're getting the response back, I'm going to console.log this one, the response. Cool. And as we set now this URL, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to set this. And for this case, we are having a put. I'm going to copy this. And pay attention, because this is now going to be a put. If you don't change to put, it is going to bring you some errors. And here, remember to use this update. And I think we are now ready to go. And after we are done with this one, we are going to go back to our employee controller, and we are going to add the edit. So the edit method, let me put it down here. So this is going to be update method instead of edit, because we have implemented the edit one. I'm going to say public function, and I'm going to call this as update, the same name that we implied here. And after calling the update, we need to use the request, and I'm going to call this request, and I'm going to bring in the ID that we'll be getting from the loot. And inside here, we need first of all to validate this data to make sure that they are meeting our requirements. And as we validated this data beforehand when we were trying to insert, I'm going to go back and try to use some of the data for the validation. So I'm going to see where the validation starts, and I think we're starting here. So I'm going to copy this and copy, but when you copy paste, you have to pay attention that you are going to use that according to how you need it. So this is now the validation that we're going to use, and it's kind of like the same validation for the insert. So after now we validated this and we're generating the errors, we can go ahead and implement the errors if the validation didn't fail. And in the errors also there is another thing that we have to use. We can use this to our interests. Inside here I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and pay attention please. Whenever you are going to perform this, you can make a ton of errors, and instead of making a new employee, I'm going to find the employee with the ID from the parameter, and I'm going to do like this one, and here I'm going to let me say updated, and instead of saving I'm going to update. Okay, and also before we do this, we can also check for the employee if now he is existing or not. And to do that, I can come back and use the if condition here that I used in here, and I can bring in all these kind of stuffs like this. But pay attention whenever you are copy paste, because you can shoot yourself in the foot for sure. And I'm going to pass in here, and I'm going to pass whenever the employee exists in this context, and whenever is existing I'm going to delete this, and this is when I'm going to copy this up to here. All right, so I'm going to say whenever employee is existing, that's where we're going to perform all of these. And if she didn't exist in our context, we're going to throw an exception, and then you can see where you messed up. And after we are done with this, we are ready to test if this is working or not. I hope it will work. So I'm going to go back here and give it a refresh. I'm going to inspect to see what's going on there. So I'm going to edit one of these records, and I'm going to add another S, and click on edit, and you go to the console. You can see that I'm not getting anything. It is possible that we are having issues. So let me go back here, and once the scenarios like this one happens, there is a higher chance that we are not getting an ID because we didn't get anything from the server. So we're going to troubleshoot by seeing that if we are getting the ID, the appropriate ID in here. And you can see that the problem is already here. We didn't get the value, and we're supposed to do like this one. All right, so let's go back and refresh, and then give it a go again and see if it can solve our errors. So I'm going to go back to edit, and I'm going to add another S and click on edit, and it didn't change. So I'm going to go back and check if I'm getting now the ID. So I'm going to console.log amp ID, and I'm going to refresh, and let's what happen whenever I click on edit. You can see that I'm not getting the ID, which is a problem. So I'm going to troubleshoot this. So let's see. I think I have figured out the problem. The problem is that we didn't specify that this is now a class. So I'm going to add a dot, and now the problem is gone. So let me go back and refresh and go back to the developer console. I'm going to go to the edit, and I'm going to try to pass in another S and go to the console. And when you click on edit, you can see that it is now bringing this, and the problem is about what? So let me check where here. All right, so let me go back, refresh and edit, and whenever I add another SS, wow, we can see that now it was bringing this message that employee updated successfully. All right, so the next thing that we have to do is to deal with this kind of message so as to be able to show these into our messages, and also to handle the error that we may be facing during these kind of stuffs. I'm going to minimize and go back to the code, and instead of using those console.log, we are going to use something specific. And I'm going to check, for example, if we're getting now the response status as 200, like this one, and if you're getting this, we are sure that we're getting the data as expected. And in this case, we need to set now the success message as now this one. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of these. So I'm going to do like this inside here, and I'm going to add a bit of formatting like this one. And after we do this, I'm going to go back and pass in some message, and I'm going also to copy this line of code to save time, like this one, like this, and I'm going to show this. And after we do that, we need to hide the model or so as to be able to have a clean workspace. And I'm going to hide the model as edit employees, and I'm going to pass that model dot hide. Okay, like this one. And after we do that, we need to call the fetch employees function to be able to update our table, like this one. And we don't need to pass success messages only. We need also to check if we are getting the bad request. And I'm going to say that I'm going to use else if, and I'm going to check for this response dot status if it's equal to 400. And in here I'm going to pass another kind of error, and that's where I'm going to bring in some of the error messages to the form. And I'm going to copy this up to here, and I'm going to bring it here, and you need to change to our specification. And I'm going to do like this one because this is now the edit, and I'm going to do like this one and edit again here. All right, so whenever we are going to pass in some empty data, for example, it is going to warn us. For example, if I do like this one and try to submit, it will bring this error as expected. Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to go back and remove this ID because we were using to check. I'm going to make this as hidden so as to have a clean workspace. So I'm going to go back, refresh again, edit, and you can see that I can edit back this to Chris. And when I click edit, you can see that it was updated, but there is a problem with the model. And let me, it was called edit employee, not edit employees, and that's where we missed it. And I'm going to go back and change that real quick, and we're doing it right here. Cool. So let me refresh again, and whenever I click edit and add another S, boom, you can see that it was able to edit this low as expected. All right, that's it for edit. This was a long video, but I hope it's worth it. Let me know if you met with any problem. I'm always here to help. Let me hear your thoughts on this in your comments. Don't forget to leave the like button. Remember to check the GitHub repository for this project. I have the source code for free, and make sure you leave a follow and like. So till next time, I will see you guys back. Ciao.